Are you anxious, tired, confused? Don't feel like you can go on this way? We are going to break free of that today. Stay with me. I'm going to share something with you that you have never heard, and definitely not in this way ever. If your mind's been running all day, all night, replaying the same conversation, second guessing your decisions, imagining the worst case scenarios over and over and over, you need to hear me clearly. You are not crazy, you are not weak, and you are certainly not the only one. But you are in a loop, and we're going to break that down today. So, let's talk. If you do not interrupt that loop, you will keep getting the same emotional outcomes, the same internal patterns, and even when everything else around you changes. Different day, same spiral. Different situation, same fear. Different opportunity, same hesitation. And that's exactly why so many people are exhausted and depleted, even when they haven't physically done much. Because overthinking is work. Worry is work. It drains our body. It takes your peace, your clarity, and your confidence. So in this episode, I'm going to give you help in a hurry. That is not fluff. It's not just calm down. It's not just surface level encouragement. It's not to just cheer you up. I want to give you something practical, biblical, and grounded in neuroscience so that when your mind starts that racing, you can get relief now. You can get it immediately. Not perfect peace forever, but it's the start of transformation. It will give you peace in that moment, and that's the start. You can interrupt that spiral. You can lower the intensity. You can regain authority, and you can stop feeding that loop and make permanent change. All of that matters. Dr. Caroline Leaf does a tremendous job. She does work with so much neuroscience. She talks about what we're thinking, we are wiring. That means that overthinking isn't just a bad habit emotionally. It's a practical pattern neurologically. And that should give you encouragement, not discouragement. Because if it's been practiced, it's been trained and can be retrained. If it's been wired, it can be rewired. It's become familiar, but it does not need to be permanent. And that's what I love. This lines up so powerfully with Scripture, science and Scripture. Romans 12:2 tells us to be transformed by the renewing of our minds. And 2 Corinthians 10:5 tells us take every thought captive. This isn't just poetry. It's practical instruction, and it lines up with science. God is not telling us to just pretend thoughts don't exist. He's telling them not to let them rule us. So today I want to walk you through a 5-step reset that is inspired by my own work in the Salt and Light framework I developed, and also Dr. Leaf's new work in her book, and we'll talk about that. So here's the 5 things. Reveal, reset, renew, restore, relive your life in a better way. And this is what I want to talk about getting help in a hurry, not just someday. So you can reset your mind when it's spiraling, something that you can practice until peace becomes permanent. Okay, so it can stop the panic. And if you repeat it long enough, it becomes permanent. Because real transformation isn't built on one emotional moment. It's built on repeated agreement with truth. So let's start here. The first step is to reveal. I mean, seeing differently. You have to reveal the thought. Not just going with feelings first, right? Identify the thought. Most people say, I feel anxious. I feel overwhelmed. I feel stressed. I feel just off. But underneath that feeling are thoughts that have been repeated enough time that they've created emotional responses. The thought comes first. So when you're spiraling, the question isn't, what's wrong with me? Your first question should be, what am I saying to myself right now? What thought is on repeat? Is it, what if this goes wrong? What if I fail? What if they get mad at me? What if I make the wrong decision? What if I can't handle what comes next? You cannot interrupt a thought that you refuse to identify. So reveal is seeing. And this is where many people get stuck. They're trying to manage their feelings without confronting the thought that's feeding that. But if your thoughts shape your feelings influence behavior, your behavior produces results, we need to look at the thought. So if you want different results, we have to go further upstream. Let's reveal the thought. Step 1, that's what it is. And sometimes step 1 alone brings immediate relief, because when you name that thought, it loses power. Oh, this is that loop again. This is what's been running me. There's power in naming, in identifying. Because what stays vague and in the darkness becomes enormous. It becomes undefeatable. But once you name it, you can face it. So step 1, reveal. Step 2 is reflect. Now that you've identified the thought, ask yourself, where is this coming from? Not in a dramatic way, but in an honest way. Where is that rooted? Is it in fear? Is it shame? Is it control? Is it perfectionism? Is it a wound from my past? Is it a pattern learned from childhood? Is it maybe a belief that if I don't hold everything together, everything will fall apart? We all have our own narrative. Thoughts are not random. They are rooted. And when you start reflecting on the thought instead of just reacting to it, it weakens its power. Because now it's not just a wave hitting you, you're examining it. It's a huge shift. For example, what if the thought is something like, if I make the wrong decision, everything's going to fall apart? The root may not be indecision. The root may be fear of failure, or the root may be disappointing others, or fear that may make your whole life unravel. If the thought is, I can't handle this, this may not be just a thought in itself. It's a long-standing agreement with weakness and being inadequate or not enoughness. Reflection may be that what we need to just bring light to this. If you do not separate any of this out, you're going to keep treating every moment like a crisis. And you're dealing with old scripts. Step 1 is reveal. Step 2 is reflect on that. Step 3 is reset. This is where you stop feeding the loop. And this is another part people miss. You do not have to follow every thought you think. Let me say that again. You do not have to follow every thought you think. Because it's just a thought. It enters your mind. It doesn't mean that you have to agree with it. Just because it's familiar doesn't mean it's true. Just because it's loud doesn't mean it's right. So now you have named the thought, reflected on the root. You interrupt it. You stop the automatic agreement. You say, okay, now I see what's happening here. This is a story from my past. Or this is just something I've repeated and agreed with. It does not get to take up real estate in your head. Write it down. Say it out loud. Speak it out into the open. Because what stays internal and in darkness tends to grow. But what comes into the light loses its intimidation. There's something powerful about saying to yourself, what I'm believing right now is not the truth. I need to see where this came from. The more you recognize it, it loses its absolute power and its fear-driven root. Pull it up by the root. Reset. The thought showed up, but do not let it drive. You interrupted it. That's a win. Don't underestimate that. The spiral loses momentum every time you refuse automatic agreement. So step 1 is reveal. Step 2 is reflect. Step 3 is reset. Step 4 is renew. This is where you replace the thought with truth. Not just positive thinking, not fake confidence, not cute phrases, truth. Biblical truth, grounded truth, life-giving truth. Because if you only remove the old thought and do not replace it, your mind will default back to what's familiar. Now ask yourself, what's true here? Not what's the loudest, not what feels most urgent, not what's shouting. What is true? If the thought is, what if something goes wrong? Maybe the truth is, it hasn't in the past, and God is with me even when things are hard. If the thought is, I cannot handle this, maybe the truth is, I don't have to handle it alone. If the thought is, I'm behind, maybe the truth is, I'm not abandoned. I'm still being formed and shaped and supported. If the thought is, I always mess things up, maybe the truth is, I am learning, growing, and I am not defined by my past. This is where scripture becomes living and active. This is where renewing the mind becomes real. This is also where repetition matters. Because one truthful thought repeated doesn't always overpower the fear-based thoughts that's been repeated for years, decades. One thought doesn't change us. But Dr. Leaf talks about approximately 63 days being the needed number of a thought being repeated to create a new pattern. This is what amazed me the other day, because that is exactly how many days it takes for somebody to work through my Salt and Light workbook. That was affirmation and confirmation. Amazing. But that's a pretty powerful number, 63. It's not super long, but it's not a day. There's a pattern that needs to be formed. Transformation is not about an emotional spike. One bad day, one good day. It's a process. And what you repeat over time becomes the new normal. That means if you want to make serious change, you need to stop looking for one breakthrough moment to fix everything. You need to get patterns. This is how we do change. This is how habits change. This is how our lives change. This is how we restore. So this fourth step is renew. And fifth step is restore. Restore is what happens when your thinking starts changing your living. This is where peace becomes accessible. This is when your body stops carrying that fight or flight emergency level, where decisions get clearer. When you stop living reactively, you're able to respond. Restore doesn't mean life gets easy all of a sudden. When you stop living without any problems, but you're not at the mercy of your fear. Your internal world becomes stable and steady. It means that when a thought comes, you know what to do. You reveal it, you reflect on it, you reset the pattern, you renew with truth, and you restore with your response. So instead of spiraling immediately, instead of freezing, you move. Instead of assuming the worst, you return to truth. Instead of letting fear decide, you choose alignment. That is restoration. Let me make this practical. Let's say you have a difficult conversation coming up. The old pattern says something like, I don't want to do this. This is going to go badly. They're going to misunderstand me. I just need to avoid this. That thought creates anxiety. That anxiety creates hesitation. Hesitation creates avoidance. Avoidance creates fear. Now watch what happens when you walk through the framework. Reveal. The thought I'm having about this conversation is that it's going to go badly. Why does this feel this way? Why am I afraid of conflict? Why am I afraid of being misunderstood? I don't have to let that thought run me. I see the pattern. It comes from my childhood. I can be honest and kind and grounded, and God will be with me in this. I'm going to have the conversation anyways. I'm going to trust that I have what I need to stay stable in this conversation, and that's when the loop breaks. Not because you became fearless in 1 second, but because you interrupted an old pattern and practiced one new one. Because this is why I keep saying you're not stuck. You're just patterned, and patterns can change. This is probably one of the most hope-filled truths I can give you, because stuck seems permanent. Permanent sounds permanent, but patterns are trainable. Stuck is not your identity. Patterns are a process, and you have been calling yourself stuck when you're really just in a loop. It's different, and that matters. Let me say one more thing, because this is also important. You don't have to wait until you've mastered this to feel relief. You can get relief immediately when you interrupt one loop. The moment you name the thought instead of drowning in it, that's immediate relief. The moment when you write it down and stop letting it swirl and spiral, that's relief. The moment you challenge it instead of automatically believing it, that's relief. The moment you replace it with truth, that's relief. The moment you take one grounded action instead of freezing or hiding, that's relief. Small relief matters because it builds a pattern. Because immediate relief causes space, and it gives you space to choose and make more repeated truth-filled decisions. Instead of spinning, you can remember this and stop the spiral. You don't need to solve your whole life in one day. You need to just get an answer now. Immediate relief. You do not need to obey every fearful thought. You just need to break the loop. That is the work. Break the loop, return to truth, repeat the process. Repeat, repeat. Because you're repeating bad stuff. And once you do that, you consistently change your mind. Your emotional baseline changes. Your confidence changes. Your habits change. Your life changes. This isn't hype. It's discipleship. It's neuroscience. It's renewal. And that's why this matters. If you feel like this is something that you can implement, I just want you to know that there is help in a hurry. You can interrupt loops. You can change your life. If you're ready to get more inspired, please follow me. And if you'd like to follow my work, please check out Salt and Light, my book. And I also have a workbook that accompanies it. It's Rewired Mind, Restored Life. It's the Salt and Light network and framework. And I believe it does restore lives. If it can restore mine, it can restore anyone's. I'll see you in the next episode.